In this video, I wanted to talk about drawing shadows on organics, and the main important thing to note is that always look at a reference for this, because there's just such a great amount of variation when it comes to these things. I mean, even this photo is by Seth Ausubel. Thank you very much to him for this, by the way. So when you look at this image, I mean, there's a lot going on. We have the mushroom cap and we have the stem. And, mushrooms are like, they're kind of like a bit, they have like a convex side and a concave side. And they cast some very weird shadows. So I'm going to like generalize. Well, I'll try to draw it. A bit like that, not really. Kind of have like some of that. But if I'm just focusing on the general construction of it, I'm going to ghost this a few times. I should have just tried to do this initially. Just try to give the example. The other thing is I just want to focus on this mushroom, not the other one that's next to it. But, inevitably that ends up being affected by it as well. So maybe I will try to draw it and kind of show what's all going on. Because there's a lot of things to take note of when you're trying to do something like this. I should have made this ellipse a little bit larger. Okay, so we have our mushroom. So we also have this, the stem is a bit like a cylinder, and it kind of gets a bit weird because if you were to think of it like a box, it would cast a shadow, kind of using like the triangle method that I've talked about time and time again. I guess you could say it could kind of be like that, and there would be this shadow shape here behind it. The other thing that's being projected based on this image is the cap itself. It's causing this round shadow. And I'll try to shade it. I should have drawn those two things on their own layer. And I'll do it as like a shadow layer. So, the other mushroom over here is kind of projecting a little bit of a shadow on it as well, I believe. So, to start off, let me do the shadow actually on the form. So there's like a shadow being cast on the stem from the mushroom cap itself, and it kind of like follows that. And the thing here to note is that sometimes it gets really weird, because in the inorganic example video that I did last time, trying to show how the shadows fall, you could try to use the triangle method when you're trying to figure out where the shadow is dropping, but I feel like when it comes to actual organics and most of the things you'll look at in real life, you just need to look at the reference and kind of do that again and again and again, do tons of studies until you could eventually comprehend it. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. If anything, it's really difficult to do just because of all of the different things that are going on. The other thing, we have the cap, which is casting a bit of a round shadow. And I'll fill it in to kind of show you where the shadows kind of are lying. And the interesting thing here is, well, I have to section this off because there's like there's a part of the stem that isn't covered in shadow. Well, I guess I really can't draw through that form. The main crux is it gets really weird, and I think trying to determine this through any more technical method like triangles, like I think they can serve as a good basis point. It can give you some help and guidance, but don't rely on that alone, and understand it's probably a unique case for every new organic. Like you could try to do it, but you may often just need to say, I need to approach this using drawing what I'm seeing with the shadows or the shadow shapes. I just realized this area, I shouldn't cover that area. And more often than not, even in this example, I keep trying to separate the smaller mushroom from the shadow shape, but I mean, ultimately that's all being affected by it. I mean, granted, that mushroom is probably helping contribute to the other shadow, but you would think that even though that shadow is like covering more of it, because that shadow may exist or fall upon it somehow, that mushroom, the smaller mushroom, is casting its own shadow, and it's just kind of merging with that other shadow, so it's really hard to you really can't see it unless you were to separate it out in your mind and try to draw it. So there's just a ton of variation when it comes to it. Another important thing I want to say is I think some people may learn that texture, like you may hear the words draw the shadow shapes of texture, and I think that's a bad way to do it. I feel like for the most part, texture is its own thing. It's its own small three-dimensional objects compared to the shadow shapes, which are kind of the way light hits that texture and causes the smaller shadow shapes. Like, I feel like texture isn't shadow itself. It's its own thing. Like, you can't feel a shadow. I mean, maybe you could feel like the warmth of light, or the cold of darkness, but you can't, like, it's not tangible. So here we have our shadow. And there's also this over here that I just realized I didn't fill in. So that is there also. Oops. So yeah, there is this other shadow shape. There's a lot of shadows being cast around by the way the light's hitting the mushroom. And I kind of had to draw through here. But the other thing is, if you truly look at the shadow, and I guess I'm going to have to draw it. I'm going to have to draw the smaller shadow, or the smaller mushroom, because it's just too difficult to separate in the run of things from it all. Because it's just so integral to it all, I believe. Oops. Why is it not? Oops, wrong layer. I'm making this, I kind of made the stem way too large. It should have been a lot shorter now that I'm looking at it. My mistake. I'll just try to work with it. I should have been thinking harder about it. The other thing is these mushrooms kind of have like a top cap, and it's kind of hard to see, but it's definitely like bulging out more where the stem follows through to the top, even though you really can't see it. Okay, so the thing about the shadow, that it's definitely not covering that much of it. The other thing is it's so annoying. So I'm gonna have to try to do this again to kind of show. I'll try to designate I'll try to designate the shadow shapes again to kind of show again, because the upper mushroom part is casting a portion of a smaller shadow around the curvature of the smaller mushroom cap, and then it kind of just like follows behind. I mean, there's a greater shadow that kind of exists behind. The other thing is the smaller mushroom is also casting its own shadow, but it bends in this weird angle. And I think there's a rock here, and that rock here is also casting its shadow shape. You see, these things are a lot simpler if it was perhaps if the rock wasn't there and it was on a white background. If it was on a white background, but it's not. So the rock is kind of showing some other shadows to it. I hate to have to redo this again because it's so complex. But I think it's a lot kind of like that. But yeah, the rock. Oh, I should have been more cautious on the side of the rock, and I was not. But it's kind of like here. Oops, not like that. Let's see, kind of like that and that. Ignore the white between, but the white between it. Oh, it's also being not like that. It's also being cast on the cap here, so it kind of follows it on that. But yeah, that's the main. Those are the main shadow shapes that I'm seeing. The other thing is, it's hard to see, but the way that cap is, there's kind of like smaller, less dark shadows, more like gray shadows around the curvature of the mushroom cap. So that's another important thing to be aware of. It would be better if we like see this in person so you could understand how the shadows sit, but it's a little bit difficult to see that. But yeah, I'll have to leave that up. I will visit this again because I feel like there are a lot of examples I could touch upon, but I'll leave it here. So if you have a question, please ask in the comments. If you like the video, please like it, and if you like my channel, please subscribe. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.